what is happening.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
One thing that we don't ever want to forget either, it's going to be much safer to travel. And I think when you look at who we are in this state, we've got to make sure we take care of the citizens. And when they do come here and they do spend the money, that we can protect them while they're here, which means they can drive up and down these roads safely.
Governor Parson, about 2:30 in the afternoon yesterday, just hours after one of the most massive traffic jams that we have seen in a long time, and I attribute it to infrastructure. That is an infrastructure problem. What happened in Jefferson City at the trial level yesterday, my goodness.
If someone is not fired this morning, I am sorry. It was an absolute disaster. And yeah, it was supposed to be kind of a celebratory day yesterday for infrastructure. And meanwhile, for all of those of us sitting on 63, and you know, I had some appointments. None were super important, thank goodness. But I will say, I was going to the salon and I had to cancel my appointment.
Self-care. There's nothing
very
wrong
sad.
with self-care.
But for example, I have a deposition this morning. I am going to have to leave a little bit early. I need to get there. I heard from other people they missed court appointments. They missed meetings with important state officials. I know our friend Scott Fawn, his producer, didn't make it in, and he had an audio issue with his show and had to. So I mean, it affected lots of people in Jefferson City and business, and I just don't understand what went so wrong. I hope they do a full breakdown, because I get it. You can have a traffic accident. I think the problem was the response to the accident and how long it actually took to get cleared up.
Marsh, what kind of stories are you hearing this morning? Because on the if you get stuck on the tri-level, there's no way out. And my history with the tri-level over the years anyway, man, there's no way out, John.
Well, it was one of those deals, and I was corresponding with Stephanie while she was stuck in it yesterday afternoon, and it was a big mess. A lot of folks are not happy, and I think folks today would like to hear some answers as to just why did it take 5 hours to clear this accident scene.
Poor Stephanie. She had multiple news agencies contacting her. Are you still stuck?
Yep, not moving fast. I hit the traffic, so I actually left the show, and I had an important call. And so I stopped in Ashland, and I said, I'm hoping to give them some time to clear it. I was mistaken. So I hit this dead stop traffic at like 10:45, and I cleared the bridge just right at about 2 hours after hitting the dead stop traffic. So it was miserable.
Yeah, and I'm wondering about the future, because the tri-level has been a thing before. John, have you ever heard any talk? Like, seriously, that it's just bizarre. All of it's not even open now. They just laid down some new asphalt. Has there ever been any talk that, Marsh, that you or Houseworth have ever heard about, maybe we should do something about this, even prior to yesterday? You ever heard talk, Marsh?
Not in recent memory.
No, and I'll tell you, I think Stephanie brings up and John too, it is a safety issue. And I can't tell you how much, Jennifer Bukowski, Mark Ellinger, these are just people I've talked to, attorneys, the Supreme Court General Counsel, Beth Riggert, one of our listeners. It took her forever, and she was right behind it at 8:05. Took her forever to get to the Supreme Court. I got this directly from MoDOT yesterday at the ceremony we were at. The MoDOT spokeswoman told me that a lot of MoDOT employees couldn't get to work either because the crash. It is an issue, and we don't know. This truck driver was 18 years old, has nothing to do with his age. He was from Chillicothe. But my gut feeling is maybe he had not been into. It's a very confusing thing to go through. It is, much less with a tractor trailer. And all it takes is one, and the thing skidded, then there was a fuel spill. The fuel spill added a lot of time, by the way, to the cleanup. But it's just very confusing, and there's really no signs ahead of it. I mean, if you have never been through that thing before, it is I've heard a term that starts.
It's a cluster.
It's a cluster.
A cluster that has something else at the end was how a lawmaker
I think you heard
one time described it.
I think you heard that term from me as I was sitting in the traffic yesterday.
Yeah, I've heard it from a lawmaker too. But it is a mess. And here's one other quick point. John and I have covered a number of horrific fatalities on that thing over the years. And I remember one tractor trailer crash John, it's probably been 20 years ago, and it's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was the one where the guy, I think was hauling an entire load of nail polish remover from the Unilever plant and crashed the truck into the bridge deck, and there was a major fire and killed them, and they have never reopened that section of the tri-lane.
Correct.
Well, and I think that's important because it is kind of a major thoroughfare for shipping. And so you see, so yesterday it was cows, then it was nail polish. We've also seen some people with hauling large items get stuck up in there because they're not exactly sure how that whole thing goes. And so I think the sheer volume of traffic and the kind of traffic that comes through there just complicates the situation. But certainly, I don't want to say MoDOT should open an investigation, but it should at least be on a list somewhere to do a breakdown of what went wrong yesterday.
And I don't know what, it would take a major rearranging, obviously, because you've got the part of it going to Highway 50 towards Sedalia, and then you've got 63 and 54 that run together, and then they've got the lake traffic. It would take a major, but it would be well worth it if you could somehow figure that out, because that's a mess.
And these might be kind of small potatoes, but real life impact. So Stephanie had an appointment yesterday where she was going to spend some money at a small local business. That small local business, they did not get Stephanie Bell's money yesterday. Producer Hannah supposed to go to a grocery store. Didn't happen yesterday because she had to get home to California, Missouri. Hannah had to drive to Kansas City and then go back.
Boonville.
Which, by the way, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but I feel that I was responsible for getting traffic moving when it did.
Check this out.
I had this grocery order scheduled for pickup in Jefferson City at 2 o'clock, and that was the only thing keeping me from having to go home through Jefferson City. I could have hopped on I-70 and gone the other way. But I had this grocery pickup, and I was right in that window of where I could cancel the order.
There you go.
So I went back and forth on it, finally decided to cancel it. I'm not even kidding. 5 minutes later, we get the text that traffic has been reopened, and it's flowing, and I was a little upset about that.
And Hannah is not exaggerating. I saw it happen. And a lot of impacts.
So you're welcome.
Yesterday on the Tobler Show, we were talking about this. Guy called into the show, and he was talking about how it affected him. And these are, again, maybe some small potatoes. He said, thank goodness I had gone to the bathroom. And the other thing that happened, he got traffic even bumping along at 2 to 3 miles an hour. He got rear-ended. So all this is going on. They can't get anybody. They can't get a police report. They can't get accident crews to where they were. It was just a monumental mess.
Yeah, I had a quarter of a tank of gas, and my light didn't come on until after I rolled through. But I got really lucky there. But also, yesterday it was a lot of, folks headed into Jefferson City, but this issue has come up before in Ashland, in that MoDOT has this policy where they've been taking off the exits because of safety, right? And so if you want to, and so it's come up in the Ashland Alderman meeting where we say, look, if you're taking off all of these turnoffs because they're unsafe, you're pushing everybody onto our one exit ramp. So to the extent we ever have a problem, guess what? There's no other alternate routes, and that in and of itself creates a safety issue. And for example, in Ashland, we've got more big businesses coming in. We've got Amazon. We've got and then we've got farm implements as well. So you're pushing all of these people onto our one road. I think MoDOT's policies really need to be reexamined. Either they need the money to add additional exits and on-ramps and everything else, or they need to change their policy.
They got the gas tax money. Maybe they could use that.
And they also, keep in mind, our listeners don't want to hear it, but the reality is President Biden signed a federal infrastructure bill that's still got a lot of money in it, and the money would be there. If someone wanted to tap into that, I guarantee you they could get the money. It is a safety issue. And thank goodness you mentioned the gentleman going to the bathroom. What if somebody would have had a heart attack or a medical issue? That's a serious concern.
It is, and I don't mean to laugh, but I saw a couple people riding the shoulder that they just took off down the shoulder, and I thought, I don't know what's going on in their life. Go for it.
How did this affect you yesterday? Because these are, again, some small potato implications, but I say, you had a sick child, and you're trying to, I'm like, child's sick, and I'm getting there, and I can't even get an ambulance. If I'm stuck in traffic, can't even get an ambulance to where I am. And by the way, I'm not paying for any improvements. I got my gas tax refund yesterday.
I was gonna say, John, that's a great point of the gas tax, but it's Brandon's fault that nothing's been done.
I ain't paying for it. I got $39 back from the state of Missouri. By George. Welcome to the show.
How many hours did you put into that?
An hour.
Just one?
About an hour.
That's worth it, though.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. By the way, Governor Parson, so then hours later, he's signing this I-70 bill. A whole bunch of folks gathered there. Infrastructure. The governor is here, 7:35. We're going to talk more about this. And this NIL bill that he signed, kind of interesting. Mizzou just signed a huge, probably the biggest recruit in program history. I think it was Dave Matter from the Post-Dispatch. Covers Mizzou sports, said probably the most significant signing in the history of Mizzou football. Cousin Andy, who you hear on the show here from time to time, he hosts a sports talk show on our one of our sports stations. I asked him yesterday, I'm like, how did Mizzou land this guy? And he said, number one, Drinkwitz, apparently a very good recruiter. Number two, this new NIL law in Missouri. As a matter of fact, he's going to be joining us tomorrow to talk about that. Andy is there. Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Brian Houseworthy is here.
I would add, I respect Dave Matter a lot, but no offense to William Nonnery, but I'd have to put Dorial Green Beckham signing in 2012 for those of us who remember it, just a little bit above that. But Nonnery's right behind him. That was a huge deal.
Nonnery is the guy who just committed.
William Nonnery, Lee Summit North, yes.
Who just committed. There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
Mr. Marsh is here.
Good morning.
My name is Branden Rathert, 874-9390, 874-9390. One of the other things we're going to be doing this morning, I do really hope you join us, 810. You know, we joke and we're serious when we joke about old people in politics. We've seen what has happened with Stephanie Bell, who is, she has termed Dianne Feinstein the oldest politician on the planet. We've seen what's happened with her. We've seen what's happened with Mitch McConnell. And I think it's interesting. We might cover this with Raven Harrison at 710 about people that are of voting age now, people of political acumen, what they've seen on the national news outlets in the past 8 years. Let's go after Trump derangement syndrome. Trump is bad. These people 8 years ago when Trump came into the political zeitgeist 8 years ago, you look at somebody who was 15 when this stuff started. They're 23 now. They're voting, or somebody in their 20s. Basically, their entire time in the 20s, they've seen Republicans, conservatives bad, and we don't accept what other people say. Might cover that with Raven Harrison. But at 810, the youngest representative elected in the history of Missouri, Mazzie Boyd. She represents a district in northwest Missouri. She is now 25 years old, elected to office at the age of 24. She was born in 1998 or something. That is weird, man. She's going to be joining us 8:10 this morning, and we are going to be talking about that, especially as it relates to younger folks in politics. Coming up 5 minutes from now, we are going to be doing the daily D.C. Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
We are going to have the latest fallout from the Trump indictment. What is it? Indictment number 4.
politician and not a lawyer, not an honest, honorable lawyer. This is a ridiculous application of the racketeering statute. There's probably no one that knows it better than I do, probably some that know it as well. I was the first one to use it in white-collar cases.
Rudy Giuliani, by the way, he's not talking about Stephanie Bell. Did you catch that, Hannah?
Because she's a politician and not a lawyer.
I did catch that.
Rude.
I was afraid for your life.
Stephanie Bell, the Daily.
A lawyer first.
A lawyer first, and
An older woman second.
An older woman in the city of Ashland, an elected servant to the people, and she's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown. That's Rudy Giuliani talking about the prosecutor there in Atlanta, Georgia, going after Trump, Giuliani, and everybody else that she can sling crap at.
I don't identify as a politician. All right. Yesterday, we're starting to learn more about the fallout from the latest Trump indictment, and it's just like all of the others. It's actually good for Trump. So in April, when folks were saying, hey, do you want the president to run again? About 55% of people said, or Republicans said, yeah, we want him to run again. The latest poll says 63% of folks want the president to run again. Back in April, 60% of folks of Republicans had a favorable opinion of Trump. Now that is up to 7 in 10 Republicans. So he's getting a bump. You know, they keep saying we accuse them of, hey, they're indicting him because they don't want him to run or win. And it's actually helping him. The question is, can he win in the general? And that number is still holding strong. So among everybody, 53% of Americans said they will not support him ultimately.
And that's been that way for a long time. As a matter of fact, coming up at 6:35, we might look at a few Missouri-specific polling numbers that relates to Trump right here in Missouri.
We're also getting some additional details about the fake indictment that posted early on in the day before the actual indictment. And at first, they weren't answering any questions. They're just like, I have no idea.
What happened?
But the explanation is almost worse. Now, it is. They're saying it was a fictitious docket sheet. When fictitious kind of implies that it was like made up or not the real thing, but it included the exact same counts that ultimately ended up in the real indictment. And the explanation is that, well, we were just doing a trial run. Well, if you were just doing a trial run, why wouldn't you upload a paper that said test or trial run rather than an actual document?
How does that strike you, Marsh?
Sound like baloney to me.
Yeah, I think so. So that is the official explanation we got yesterday. Also, we're learning that we might be talking about a potential of a federal shutdown. Again, I feel like we're just on a hamster wheel on this. But apparently, obviously, Republicans want steep cuts. Obviously, with the breakdown, there's going to be a lot of contention. And right now, they're thinking maybe they do a temporary measure to extend federal funding through December, a stopgap continuing resolution. So we will be hearing about that when Congress gets off a break. And then also we're hearing more. The International Criminal Court is now saying that Taliban leaders should be prosecuted for their crimes against girls and women in Afghanistan for denying them education and employment.
You know, I always think it's interesting. We hear about these stories in other countries, other cultures and stuff like this, and we're like, oh, yeah, it's another country. But you think about that some basic human privileges and rights that you don't get in other countries and we get, and most of us, we didn't have to do any. I mean, we just happen to be born here. We're pretty fortunate. But you think about that real human impact, that just because you're a female, you don't get this, you don't get that. It's crazy that stuff happens.
It's a good reminder that we still live in the best country on the planet.
I love my country, to quote Florida.
Just not the tri-level.
That's true.
We love my country, to quote the Florida-Georgia line, but we don't love the tri-level. Coming up a few minutes from now, there's some interesting rulings in the Missouri Supreme Court.
In position to do it, we now know they really have been trying to gin up criminal prosecutions and criminal investigations into the president's perceived enemies, politically motivated persecution, right? Courtesy of Bill.
Rachel Maddow. 2019, whenever Bill Barr and anybody would go after Democrats, it was weaponization of this. And I hate to do, but now that it's us now, but that's actually what's happening. A whole slew of folks criticizing whenever Trump did this stuff. And I hate to be that guy that says, well, when Trump did it, I'm not a big fan of whataboutism. But what about that? And I also find this interesting because we have a great story. An appeals court, including some Obama and Biden appointees in D.C., find that pro-life protesters were discriminated against. Fascinating story. Raven Harrison is going to be joining us at 7:10 to talk about that. Of course, we heard yesterday when Hillary Clinton was talking about how the system works.
The only satisfaction may be that the system is working.
The system works. That's right. It works for them, Hunter Biden. And now this case that we're going to be covering at 7:10 with Raven Harrison, it's just more proof that the system is working. And then we had kind of some interesting rulings from the Supreme Court yesterday in Missouri.
We really did. It was interesting. We had a COVID case, which everyone kind of thought, isn't that over?
By the way, has anybody heard you know anybody who's had COVID recently?
No.
Me neither.
Do you?
No.
All right. Well,
I hope not.
The headlines came out yesterday. Parents can face jail time over unexcused school absences, Missouri Supreme Court rules. And really, the Missouri Supreme Court just affirmed what the lower court had done. And we had talked about this. It was two single mothers who were charged with violating the state's compulsory attendance law when their children missed school. They didn't have a doctor's note. And we knew this case was, making its way up, and it kind of caught headlines. And I think this is ridiculous.
Well, and it was asked. So I think it's the part where I get weirded out, these compulsory attendance laws. Listen, if you have your kid in a school district, sure, there's rules and stuff, but I get kind of weirded out about it. But I guess the gist of the ruling was, well, that is what the law says. Whether you morally agree with the law, that's what the law says.
Yeah, I think it does say that. And I think, we should enforce our law. And if it's on the books, I think the legislature should take a look at this rule. And I don't even think they missed that much school. And I get it. You want your kids to go to school, and we have this compulsory attendance. But I think I struggle with it because why is it the government's business why my kids are out? I'm the parent. And so I agree. Maybe we don't have parents who are that concerned with their kids and they have to be forced to send, I don't know, the motives here. But I remember we all got COVID, and at the time we got it, I didn't feel comfortable sharing that with the school because there were so many hateful people. And I wouldn't say that about people in Ashland, but there were so many people who needed to mind their own business that I wasn't going to tell the school because I was afraid that then maybe somebody sees me, and they don't know when I have it. And now they're like, oh, well, you need to be at home or wear a mask or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? They don't need to know. My kids are at home. I will keep them at home for the days that we say you have to stay at home this week. And I will follow the procedures, but you don't need to know the details of my family's health information. And I think there needs to be a better balance there. And one time we went on vacation and we got a nasty gram from the school that said, your kids have missed 5 days. If they miss 10, we're going to report you to DPS. And I said, what about that time you took 3 months off and left them at home with me? Who do I report you to?
There you go.
I mean, I was so livid when I got that message. I'm like, we're all doing the best we can. And I don't appreciate the snarkiness of and obviously Southern Boone is mandated to send me that silly letter, but it really caught me on a bad day.
I think the original intention of the legislation was basically truancy and all, wasn't it? For the kids and, in some challenged school districts who, were skipping school and all that as opposed to parental decisions and all. I vaguely recall some of the debate on this a while back.
So I had COVID in 2019. I was still a Mizzou student, and the county health department notified Mizzou that I had tested positive for COVID. And then Mizzou hounded me after that for my blood because they were doing all this research on the antibodies and stuff for COVID.
So, and especially like in a smaller town, let's say like in Ashland or Wardsville, someplace like that, where, okay, so somebody at the school wants to know why your child is out. Small towns, listen, people talk, people gossip, especially in a small town. And yeah, I don't want people to know my business.
Exactly. So that was one big decision out yesterday. I think the court ultimately, Brandon, like you said, enforced the existing law on the books. And I think that they were kind of, they needed to do that. But I think we really need to take a look at that policy.
And then, John, this other story from the Missouri Supreme Court going back to COVID era stuff, man.
It's going back to Eric Schmidt.
Yeah.
When he was the Attorney General and when he pushed back against the business closures and the mask mandates and all that. And the Supreme Court kind of sided with the Cole County judge decision.
And I was really shocked by this. I really thought that this case would be put to rest. And so what happened was, they ruled. They had ruled, and the counties came in after the judgment and said, oh, wait, we don't like what the Attorney General did, because the Attorney General said, look, I'm not going to appeal this decision. I agree with it. And the counties didn't participate the whole time the case was going on, and after the judgment learned that the Attorney General wasn't going to appeal and said, oh, wait, but we would want to appeal. Well, if you wanted to appeal, then get involved in the very beginning, I think, personally. Yep. But they didn't, and I've seen courts before deny post-judgment intervention. It's actually a pretty high standard to get in, to wait that long and then get in. And in fact, in reading the opinion, after they learned of the Attorney General's decision not to appeal, I think within 10 days, they, came to court and said, okay, now we want in. And you kind of have to make certain showings, and one of them is your interests aren't adequately represented. And so a lot of times it is hard to intervene when you got the AG, because you're thinking, well, the AG's got me, right? My interests are adequately represented by him. Here, obviously, they said our interests aren't adequately represented because we want to appeal, and this guy's not going to appeal. But again, I think so. The showing you have to make on post-judgment intervention is it's going to be granted only if substantial justice requires intervention, and it is really a high bar. So there were also, I think, a couple people got left out because they didn't follow the court rules and file the exact right things. They also, you're supposed to really. There was a little bit of gray area in the law on whether you needed affidavits and evidence in support of your motion for intervention, and the court basically said, nah, here they don't need it.
And you can look at what happened in mid-Missouri. I mean, look at towns like how Fulton and Jefferson City did with businesses, because you had people fleeing Columbia, not leaving to move, but leaving Columbia because progressive leadership in Columbia told businesses, nope, you don't get a freedom of choice. We're demanding you shut down your business, and we're telling you as an individual, you cannot go into these businesses. That happened in Columbia, and these people were going to businesses in Fulton and Jefferson City. By the way, our current Attorney General, guess who he's invited to Missouri? See how things work. John Kerry, the climate czar. And then he starts off the letter, Andrew Bailey, the letter says something. Hi, Mr. Kerry, we understand you like to travel a lot. In effect, why don't you come see us here in Missouri and see some things?
Well, and the important thing about the opinion yesterday, too, is to know that it's procedural. So we're going to be hearing more about it, because basically it gets kicked back. The counties are going to be able to appeal, and they're going to actually be able to appeal the merits of the law, and it will go back to the Court of Appeals. So the important thing is we're not done with this COVID case yet.
Welcome into the show. Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Pelt, John Marsh, Brian Hausworth, that is producer Hannah. My name is Brandon. Coming up, 7:35, Governor Parson is going to be here. Two significant pieces of legislation that he signed yesterday, including the I-70 legislation expanding I-70. By the way, not everybody is completely on board with that. ABC 17 spoke with somebody from the Loop, which is kind of like a taxing district in Columbia. And so not everybody's completely on board with it. And listen, when they start working on I-70, it is going to be a monumental pain in the rear end.
Couldn't be any worse than yesterday.
Yesterday, we try to find out. I'd sure love to know if there are any plans. Has anybody been talking about, do we do something different with the tri-level? That's something we hope to get our heads around.
I remember back in the day, and the running story was way back when they designed the tri-level interchange in Jefferson City, and people have asked for years, why is it so cut up and designed the way it is? And the word at the time was the businesses around there didn't want to give up the right-of-way, so they had to do a workaround, and that's why the tri-level is in Jefferson City is so squirrely. Now, I don't know if that's the fact or not, but that was a story that made the rounds for years.
So it's something, hopefully, I don't know, maybe we can ask the governor about that. He's going to be joining us 7:35 this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. And then I'm excited to chat with Mazzie Boyd. She's a Republican in the Missouri House, one of the youngest politicians ever elected in the Missouri House. She was elected last year at the age of 24. Now she is 25. We talk about the old folks in the politics. What about younger folks in politics? I'm excited to be chatting with her. She's going to be joining us coming up at 8:10 this morning. And we've got some polling numbers. And we know, and kind of this is pretty consistent. Every time Trump gets in, it's like, go ahead, indict him again, because his polling numbers, for what polling numbers are worth, a year out from the primary, a week out from the debate, which, by the way, Stephanie Bell will be at that debate next week. Live reports. Can't wait for that. But his numbers continue to go up. What about his numbers specifically in the state of Missouri? We'll take a look at those coming up about 5 minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Good morning.
P500 down 52.
Look at futures coming up at 8:25 in the morning bell. One of the other things we're going to be covering, and I have a feeling the girls love this stuff. Does it feel like Halloween stuff? We're not even to Labor Day.
Pumpkin spice?
No, it's kind of related. Halloween stuff already going on sale in a lot of stores.
I don't love Halloween. I do love fall, but...
And I'm not a big fan of Halloween either. It's because I'm an old fuddy-duddy. I don't like to dress up, and it's just not my thing. And you would think because I'm shy and bashful, I don't like to be out in public. I have a birthday party I get to go to this weekend.
You get to go to. That's progress. Normally you would say I have to go to.
You're exactly
Look
right.
at you.
Yeah,
That is good.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate that. And I'll look forward to seeing you and Hannah there this Saturday at this.
Not a chance.
I have other plans this weekend.
I tried to. So Stephanie's getting.
Let's not announce any sort of events or anything.
3215 Lamone Industrial, Saturday night, right about 8 o'clock.
Right here out front on the grass.
It's going to be a good time, man. I tried to find an excuse to get out of it, and I couldn't.
Rude.
He even tried to come on my bachelorette trip.
I'm like, hey, Hannah, what do you got shaking this weekend? Maybe I'll come hang out with you. But anyhow, so I would always thought, man, I would love Halloween. Put on a costume. Nobody knows who I am. I can go out and do whatever. And I'm just not into it. But a lot of Halloween stuff going on sale early. We're going to cover that in the morning bell. Welcome to the show. It is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Weather's going to be outstanding here over the next few days. So Trump polling, we know every time Trump gets indicted, his support amongst Republicans, it goes up. According to pollings, for what polling is worth, the big issue is, and I think everybody knows it, he will not win a general election. And I wish he would. I really do. I wish he would. There is too much disdain. Because we think, listen, I go to these events. I go to the pachyderms and all this stuff, and everybody, yeah, Trump, and I get it. Yeah, and it sounds good. We're in an arena of 15,000 people all pulling for the St. Louis Blues. Yeah, we think we got this. And then the reality is, there's more than just us. There is the general electorate. And there is so much distaste for Trump because of the national news outlets. He will not win a general election, and I wish he would. Latest polling numbers, you'll probably hear these in Fox News coming up here in a few minutes, shows that Trump's polling is actually going up. But what about Missouri-specific numbers? There was a Missouri Scout Remington poll that was done, and this was in the wake of the classified documents indictment. Republican voters, 77% of Missouri Republican voters interpreted that as Donald Trump was the target of a political attack. 43% of Republicans said that if Trump was found guilty, it would make them more likely.
That's incredible. More likely to vote for him.
Versus 15% who said they'd be less likely to vote for him if he was guilty.
And that question's a little bit different if he's found guilty. But, I mean, if we change that to if he was indicted, I mean, that the numbers bear out. I mean, that's what we're seeing. People are more likely, they're more in favor of Trump with each indictment, which is kind of, but I think the way that I'm looking at it, and I think, I think the Democrats maybe think like the more number of indictments, eventually the dominoes are going to fall, and that matters.
The walls are closing in. But I see it in a different way, and I've gotten this advice from Missouri judges, actually, and they're saying, hey, you go up on appeal, and maybe you've got 10 arguments, right? But it's more powerful if you just have, one slam dunk, right? So don't give me 10 kind of crummy arguments. Give me like the one slam dunk, and I think here, as are you going to throw the spaghetti and see what sticks to the wall, or do you have a winning argument? And the more Democrats pile on these indictments, I think folks are just saying they're just throwing spaghetti and see what sticks. They don't really have a one slam dunk winner of a case, and I think a lot of people are feeling the fatigue like I am. But I think that not only now are we seeing that's where Americans are, that's where Missourians are.
Here's what surprised me about these Missouri-specific numbers is the number of people who said that they would be less likely to vote for him if he was guilty, 15%. I'm shocked that there's that percentage of folks that still feel like there's some movement in their opinion on whether or not they would vote on Trump, because the way I see it, you're going to vote for Trump or you're not. I don't believe there's anybody sitting around mid-Missouri this morning going, I wonder if I'm still going to vote for him or somebody else. I just don't see that happening. So that's the thing that surprises me, that there's that much. 15% of Missouri Republicans, according to this poll, have that kind of wiggle room.
And the way that Trump plays in Missouri, I think, is at the forefront of folks' mind. I think Eric Schmidt was in Iowa kind of stumping for Trump. And then we're seeing statements from Andrew Bailey and our treasurer, Vivek Malik, both kind of offering support for Trump. So in Missouri, I think I don't think anyone's going to get out in front and criticize Trump, at least from the Republican side.
Here's another thing that surprises me. Yesterday, this I-70 signing, pretty impactful bill signed yesterday by Governor Mike Parson. It's going to widen I-70 all the way through the Show Me State. I met a young lady. Her name is Sarah Salmons, and she works very hard at Stevens College. And she came. I'd never met her before. She comes up. She says, "Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself." And she says, "I listened to the show, blah, blah, blah." And, of course, you know what the next question was? Why do you listen? And I was surprised. And I told her, I said, the girls on the show, they give me crap because they think I'm fishing for compliments, and I'm not. And here's what she said. She says, I said, "So why do you listen?" And she said, "Well,
for our country to have a former president accused of these terribly important crimes.
So, and here's why Hillary Clinton is full of crap. That was on Rachel Maddow the other night. 5 minutes prior to her saying, this is an incredibly important moment in our history and these crimes. 5 minutes prior to that.
I can't believe this.
They're giddy. They're giddy over the fact that they knew he was getting ready to be indicted.
And it's terrible that she's not our president. I mean, just terrible, right? And she and everything in that indictment about, and I love Twitter has been full and people are doing a really good job of pulling these claims where the Democrats, including Hillary Clinton, have made claims about elections in the past and winners and losers and fraudulent votes and voting machines and all of that. And she was one of them.
Raven Harrison, you see her do a lot of stuff on Fox, joining us right now. You hear that audio, Raven? What's going through your head right now?
I'm laughing, figuratively and literally. So this woman is talking about rigged elections. President Trump got indicted for this. I seem to remember she wrote a book called What Happened? And America's like, you suck. So that's what happened is, they couldn't, she had every advantage in that election. She had, Biden and Obama campaigning for her. She had all the media in her pocket. Trump was at one time polling at less than 1%, and they couldn't throw her across the finish line. And yet now she's having this giddy laugh of, I can't believe he's been accused. Well, what has your guy been accused of? People are missing the point here. We have proof of bribery. We have proof of perjury. The fact that, he said, I don't have anything to do with my son's business dealings. And this is my cousin. No, wait, it's my wife. It's my, whatever. I didn't do it. The thing. This guy has been all over the map. And every time he does something, Trump gets indicted, literally.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you have the national news outlets on your side. Raven Harrison is hanging out with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. That is Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Producer Hannah is here.
Hello.
There's Mr. Marsh.
Yes, indeed.
My name is Branden Rathert, 874-9390, if you would like to be here, too. And there's another story, and I thought this was fascinating. An appeals court yesterday, and this includes some Obama and Biden appointees. We talk about hypocrisy, and these aren't just talking points, all right? These are facts. And here's another fact. There was a ruling yesterday, and this had to do with basically freedom of speech issues. U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C., including a couple of Democratic appointees, considered a case that the nation's capital discriminated against pro-life protesters. And at the gist of the case, basically, was the Black Lives Matter and all these kinds of things. They covered sidewalks with graffiti. They destroyed storefronts with paint and chalk. And the markings were in open violation of the district's defacement laws. But nothing happened. Pro-life advocates in smaller protests also did some chalk and graffiti, if you want to call it. They were arrested. Raven, I think that's what we try to enforce upon people. These aren't talking points. These are real things that are happening. The hypocrisy that happens in the national media and from progressives, man, this is hurting us as a country.
It really is, and I'm glad that you said that. This is why it's, important that you guys are here. Facts aren't here for you to agree or disagree. Facts are facts. And at the end of the day, if the laws aren't applied equally, then what you have is communism, and that's what we're seeing. So the Black Lives Matter, those are indisputable facts, that they cost billions of dollars in damage. There was loss of light, there was burning, there was looting, and the key distinction between the case you referenced is Black Lives Matter was putting in paint, these things. They were etched in fire. These are things that were, permanent damage. A lot of these protesters, too, in particular, were arrested for writing preborn Black Lives Matter in chalk that could be just washed away, with a hose. Were arrested for this. That's what I tell people. This is the double standard. This is how your justice system is being applied unequally. If they don't agree with your premise, then you're basically arrested. But yet the Black Lives Matter, all of them, and Democrats, many of them, bailed these people out.
Yeah, and it's frustrating when we see these things happen, and it's kind of like, what do you do here? Our guest this morning, Raven Harrison, ravenharrison.com.
Raven, spinning back to the Hillary Clinton thing and her comments on the Trump indictments, I think for a lot of people out there and those of us in the media who covered her, I mean, you think about Benghazi and Travelgate and the death of Vince Foster and all. I guess the system's working for Donald Trump, but it didn't work for her.
Well, the system is, we have to put air quotes around the system. Okay, the system is working for her perfectly, because anybody who would celebrate, especially after Benghazi, people have forgotten we lost an ambassador. We lost good men in Benghazi. We also lost $85 billion worth of high intel equipment to the Taliban, to people in flip-flops, okay, under all of this dumpster fire. But the important thing for people to remember is that Donald Trump was the indictment was released before they had voted, approved, and gone through the process that you were supposed to do when you convene a grand jury. That is what we're missing in here, is how was that coming out before they had finished getting everything approved? They went ahead and sent the indictment out. That means it's a predetermined outcome against Donald Trump, and that, my friends, is communism.
As we near the first presidential debate, what are you going to be looking for and from who? And what issue do you think hope dominates the conversation next week at that first debate?
What I would be hoping for as an American and as a strategist is that what this government is doing to Donald Trump takes headlines. That's not the best platform that these candidates want to talk about. But the problem is that if we don't fix this, nothing that they're saying matters. If the Democrats are able to do this, if they're able to keep, using our justice system to come after a citizen, then none of them will be able to fix this, because you won't get near the White House. So we have to fix, the problems with the election. I'm all over the place this morning. Our elections have to be free and fair. That is the cornerstone of everything our constitutional republic stands for, is free and fair elections. And people keep confusing that. Well, our democracy is under assault. We don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. That's what we have. So that's what I feel like should dominate, is this weaponization of the government against its people is exactly what our founding fathers risked their lives for.
Earlier, we were sharing some polling numbers specific to the Show Me States, specific to Missouri Republicans. And one of the things that surprised me in that poll was there 14% of the people polled, for what polls are worth, that said, yeah, if Trump ended up being convicted, it might change their mind on how they vote. It surprised me that there's that much wiggle room, because I think either there's nobody's changing their mind except for apparently 14% of these Republican voters in Missouri. But I want to ask you this before we let you go. Let's say it's not Trump. Have we asked you who's second on your list? Is it Vivek Ramaswamy? Is it DeSantis, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley?
I think Nikki Haley would be strongest in my opinion, pound for pound. But it's not going to be her. It's going to be Trump. I mean, they have showed that they're getting desperate. Everything they're throwing at him is falling apart, even before, like the grand jury. How is this going to stand? Yeah. Okay, you didn't follow procedure. You didn't follow protocol. You were so anxious to indict him that you don't even care about the rule of law anymore, and you're not trying to hide it. It's not going to stand. Donald Trump's going to be the nominee, and everything they do is panic and desperation, and the American people can see that. So I would say, as far as who I like, Nikki Haley would be a very strong second for me. But again, I do believe that Donald Trump will be the nominee.
There is one presidential candidate that I signed up to get text alerts from. Only one.
Why would you do that to yourself?
I know. Only one on the GOP side. You know who it is? It's not Trump. Doug Burgum, North Dakota.
Did you apply for the $20 gift card, Brandon?
That's an investment. I sent Doug $1 and he gave me $20 back.
And a phone full of text messages.
And it won't stop. I immediately regretted that decision. Raven Harrison, look for her on Fox, man. I always love it when you hang out. By the way, we are starting to firm up some dates. We should ideally by tomorrow have some dates when Raven Harrison is going to be coming to visit us here in mid-Missouri. We appreciate you, Raven. Check out the website, ravenharrison.com. We'll chat next time.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Stephanie Bell is going to be at that debate next week with reports. How stoked are you? Are you more excited to go to a GOP debate or more excited to go to the car wash? And when we say car wash, we mean Spa.
The salon.
The salon.
I have to go to the salon, so when you see me on camera next week at the debate, I'm actually headed to the state fair today, so I'm most excited about that. There are a lot of folks. I mean, I just see a lot of people there every year. It's always everyone's in a good mood. The weather's good, so I'm excited about the state fair. But yes, I've never been to a presidential debate. Seeing these folks in person. What Trump is going to do. He says now he's going to have a press conference on Monday. He still says he's not going to show up to the debate. I'm not holding. I don't know what he's going to do. So will he have some sort of competing event? It's just going to be exciting to be there and hear all the back chatter before and after and during the event about what Republicans are really thinking.
And I'm excited for it's perspective from a local Missourian. We're not relying on Fox or some national talking head. We're going to be presenting through Stephanie Bell perspective from a Missourian presidential debate next week. Other thing coming up this morning, Governor Mike Parson is here, 7:35, signing that I-70 bill yesterday. So I've got good news and I got bad news. You want the good news first or the bad news first?
Well, I think our texters, we've got some bad traffic updates.
Okay, let's do those.
It doesn't involve the tri-level, but we are getting reports that there is a semi-wreck on westbound I-70 Roachport Bridge. They're saying use the passing lane. We got that from a couple people.
So now, here's the good news. The good news is I don't have any more bad news for you. That's the good news.
And What's Hot with Hannah is coming up. Come on.
And we've got that coming up, of course, a little bit before 8 o'clock. We're going to be doing that would be all except for this. You know what you're going to be doing for that this morning, John?
It's a secret.
All right. I love that. And then 8:10, I do hope you'll join us at 8:10. State Rep Mazzie Boyd, she reps an area in northwest Missouri, elected to office at 24. I think the youngest or second youngest by a matter of months or days ever elected to the House in Missouri. And we're having her on because, we were talking about people like Feinstein and McConnell. What about this younger generation of politicians? She's going to be joining us at 8:10. Meanwhile, we are getting ready for What's Hot with Hannah.
What do an Australian dude and a staple gun have in common?
Sounds painful.
Yep.
The answer, It's Hot with Hannah.
You ever just had a really bad day?
Like
Stephanie Bell?
yesterday. It was hilarious because I got a video message from my sister and she's like, I woke up grumpy today. And I said, I didn't wake up grumpy, but I am currently grumpy after sitting in traffic.
How the turntables have turned. This guy in Australia probably had a pretty bad day. Electrical workers in Australia discovered a scorched sign that somebody had attempted to staple to an 11,000 volt cable that was running up the side of a power pole. They found the sign smoldering because it was held by a metal staple to an 11,000 volt electrical cable on the side of an electrical pole.
John, I'm not an electrical engineer, but that don't sound good.
The staple gun.
Stick your tongue in the light socket, right?
The staple gun was left at the scene of the crime, or the scene of the horrible, idiotic move. I don't even know what to call this. The worst part is it sparked, no pun intended, a power outage for over 1,000 people in Queensland, Australia. And I guess it's illegal to staple things to electrical poles.
As it should be.
In Australia, here it's not uncommon to see an electrical pole stapled up with garage sale signs, anything like that.
Whatever's playing at the Blue Note this weekend.
Yeah, lost dog signs. And I do feel bad for the electrical workers who have to climb those poles because it leaves behind a lot of staples, and I'm sure that's sharp and doesn't feel very good to climb. But yeah, in Australia, it's very illegal. You could get fined up to $6,000 for this. So they're trying to find this specific guy who caused this power outage with one little staple. And they also want to know, how are you not dead?
Yeah, when you said the gun was left behind, I was like in the guy's hand as he was like fried on the ground because if he stapled through the thing, how?
Well, so not only, of course, the staple was metal, the staple gun is also metal.
Right.
So they have questions. They want to talk to this guy. And the guy was also stapling up a sign for a business.
Ooh.
I feel like that's like graffitiing your name on something. They know where to go to find you.
Well, it's like the poor gal who had her mugshot taken with her work polo or whatever. And you're the business and you're getting outed and you're like, I take no responsibility for that person.
A couple of weeks ago, a woman who works at a convenience store in Boonville apparently got busted at the store, and in the mugshot, there's the name of the convenience store right there. That's a pretty bad day, I would suppose.
If they ever catch this Australian dude, he's going to be facing legal action.
And they're probably, and we're a little mad, yeah, but dude, how did you survive? We're really curious about that.
It's like, do you remember a couple years ago that guy that called in and told us about the time he got struck by lightning?
And got popped 30 foot off the ladder?
Yeah.
And he lived to tell about it. What was the worst part of your day? Yesterday, Steph. Never mind. Hannah, what was the worst? Never mind. Marshway was the tri-level traffic jam, wasn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We just got a funny text from Stuart at 874-9390. He said, Hannah, how do you know it was a dude? And that is a fair point, Stuart. But I feel like assumptions could be made.
This is why we stereotype. It works. Yeah. Oftentimes it works, and so we're stereotyping and assuming that's a dude. You're not going to see a producer, Hannah, going up to a telephone pole with a stapler to an electric pole going, that's something Hannah nor Stephanie would ever do. Now, me, Marsh,
yeah.
I watched that bridge collapse. I got there and saw it collapse with over 200 feet off the ground going over a valley.
So that's not true. But you already knew that, right? How do you know Joe Biden's lying?
He opens his mouth.
He said that yesterday. Remember last year we were talking about incidentally, it was on a Feel Good Friday. Feel Good Friday, we said, hey, listen, here's the big stories. Everything's cool. All the bridges are up. Everything's fine at Rocheport and going into Jeff City. And as it turned out...
a bridge fell in Pennsylvania that day.
Yeah, and so Joe Biden yesterday trying to tell people when he talks about infrastructure, I saw it collapse. He is lying. Meanwhile, huge news. Yesterday in Missouri, Governor Parson signing this I-70 bill. Governor Parson joining us on the show right now. And before we move forward, Governor, the first thing I want to apologize. I know you called into the show and producer Hannah hung up on you. So let's start with the apology.
On accident.
I don't know what she's ticked off about this morning, but anyhow.
I'm sorry, Governor.
Listen, real quick, man, the importance of this I-70 bill signing and what's going to happen for us in Missouri.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, Brandon. I mean, for the state of Missouri and the future of our state to be able to accomplish that, we've all talked about that for decades, and now finally you're going to get to really see it happen. And it was pretty cool to be in Columbia yesterday signing the bill and making a major announcement on it. But it's going to be an exciting time for Missouri. It's going to help us in a lot of different ways, economy and safety, and just bringing us, as a leader in the nation and just doing it right and taking care of it ourselves and not having to worry so much about the federal government doing it for us.
Governor, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time to join us live, and then you gave me a couple interviews yesterday, too, at both of the ceremonies, so thank you for that. At the I-70 bill, and I'm following up on Brandon's point that was out at MACC, I also spoke to Representative Kent Hayden, who you know well from Mexico. He's lost his hospital in Mexico and his hospital in Fulton. And he said, basically, this is not just an economic development issue. This is a safety issue. He said, if I-70 is clogged, people die, that minutes are that important. If you talk about that, the importance of that from that safety perspective, Governor.
Well, I don't think there's any question the safety factor of it. When we talk about 6 lanes, we kind of think about a convenience and transportation economy, but you also do have to look at the reality of it. We want it to be safer out there because more and more people are using the roads. And we all see what the traffic's like out there when you drive up and down there, the semis, the cars. And just to relieve that, make it safer is going to help us all a little bit. And it's going to save lives at the end of the day. So,
and we talk about the infrastructure. We saw what happened on the tri-level and the hours and hours of problems that caused. So it is important stuff.
Let's talk about the second ceremony, or maybe it was the third ceremony technically, but the second issue yesterday in Columbia there with the NIL signing. A lot of the Mizzou coaches and other folks from athletics were there. And it's been a big recruiting week for Mizzou. What are you hearing from your coaches and universities about the impact of that legislation on our state?
Well, needless to say, they were extremely upbeat up there yesterday. MU just got some great athletic departments up there. And look, athletes work hard to get to where they are, to get to that level. So for them to be able to be part of the success of that, whether it be financially or not, is a good thing because it costs a lot of money to do what they do. But the reality of it is, everybody was making money off of this in different forms, different ways. And let's just face it, there was a lot of ways people were doing things that they probably, quote, shouldn't have been doing. But now I think we're more upfront, it's more transparent. And like I said, you want to be able to recruit these athletes. I think this will be a first of a kind in the United States. So I think Missouri is going to be leading it again in another important issue. And I think there's going to be opportunities for the universities, for the students, for the parents. I just think it's going to be a good deal all the way around.
Andy Humphrey, who you hear here on the show from time to time, hosts an afternoon sports talk show here in mid-Missouri. I asked him the other day, how did Mizzou sign this big football recruit? He said Drinkwitz is a good recruiter, and he said this new NIL legislation. Our guest on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning is Governor Mike Parson.
Governor, back to the angle on the Jefferson City tri-level. I know a big part of the I-70 project is a redo of the 7063 connector in Columbia, and the tri-level is kind of its counterpart in Jefferson City. I guess the question is, it was a big mess, and I'm sure you've dealt with messes like that in your law enforcement career. But is there any thought to maybe MoDOT taking a long look at that confusing interchange in Jefferson City?
I don't think there's any question. I mean, we're going into a different era, the way we're approaching things through MoDOT. I mean, we're pushing the envelope in a lot of things, and I'm pushing them hard. I'll just be honest about it. I said, look, if we're going to put the money in that we have in infrastructure in this state, we're going to have to make sure we're hitting on all cylinders. I mean, so we're going to have to do things that look outside the box sometimes, and we're just going to have to work a little harder. And, I think they've done a good job answering that call. But I think anytime you see those intersections like that, once upon a time, maybe there was a design, maybe we thought it was going to be better, but the reality of it is sometimes you got to look back and say, hey, that's not too good, so let's fix it.
Couple of questions. Sorry, Governor, I didn't mean to interrupt you. A couple of questions off the text. Federal, do we know the breakdown of the federal funds being used for this I-70 project?
Well, right now we're footing the bill. That bonding is going to be huge for us. That Lincoln Huff put in there, the chairman of appropriations put that in there. So I think that's a long-term investment for a state. And honestly, I think it's a good way to do it. I mean, if you're going to use bonding, that's one of the ways to do it. And we just paid off all our general obligation bonds not here too long ago. So financially, we're in real good shape. Now, I know Sam Graves, and we've talked to the coalition and the federal government. I'm sure there'll be different pools of money that they can bring to help with it. So, but, you can't sit around and just wait on the federal government all the time. It just doesn't work that well. And I think the things we can do to help ourselves in this state and make our state better, that's kind of what we're supposed to be doing and take that responsibility.
Let me ask you this, Governor, and because you don't have to name names or anything, but I do want to ask, obviously, we've got some pretty intense races coming up in the next year for governor and some other statewide offices. What's the politicking like behind the scenes? Do you get people coming and say, hey, Governor, you going to back? Are you getting a lot of that?
Oh, I don't think there's any question people would like to get you engaged a little bit more. And at some point I may very well do that. We've worked really hard to bring the state to the level it is. And, when I hear candidates go out there and start talking about this administration or our state being doing all these wrong things, it's just very disappointing that that's the way they feel like they got to win an office. And I would tell anybody this, and I'll tell every one of your listeners in there. If those candidates can't come in there and tell you what they're going to do to make it better, then you probably better take a good evaluation of the candidates, is all I got to say. Because, this state's probably in the best shape it's been in a long time. And what we need to do is build on the foundation that we've done right now. But I just hear too much negative talk about things in the state that's wrong. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but I'm telling you this state is in the best shape it's ever been. And, I want somebody to build on that. So, yeah, if it comes to that point, I will get engaged and make sure I feel like somebody's going to follow what we've started because we know it's working.
I think it's working, too. Well, I heard yesterday that you and Branden were comparing tats. And I'm wondering, though, too, because you've got more. One of your granddaughters actually drew your tattoo, and you've got more than one grandchild. I'm wondering, are they politicking, saying, hey, Grandpa, I can draw tattoo number 2?
Well, I don't know whether they would or not, but I've kind of stepped down the ledge there already a little bit for me. So, but it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun, and I thought if I knew I was going to get all this attention, I would have done it in 2020 when I run for governor. All the advertising.
That's Governor.
It was kind of one of those things that meant a little bit to me, and it was fun for her to do it. But yeah, I got 6 grandkids, so that's probably the last ink I'm going to put on for the grandkids side of it.
I was going to say, where do you put the next tattoo? And by the way, Governor Parson's tattoo, I think, is way cooler than mine. Unless there's anything else specifically that you would like to mention before we let you go, I did kind of want to ask, and it's kind of a habit we've gotten into. There's so much negative stuff as it relates to politics and the economy and Bidenomics and social issues. Can you offer us some hope this morning, Governor?
Yeah, you know what? The federal government's a mess, but you don't need me to tell anybody that. It's just all the way around. It's just craziness going on at that level. I think if it wasn't for states like Missouri, I think for what we believe in and our administration and many other states that think like we do, there's a lot of good things happening. And if it wasn't for the states kind of propping this country up right now, I don't know what shape we'd be in. to say the least. But I will tell you, I still have faith. I served this country in the military. All the things I've done in my career is about the American dream, and I don't want people to give up on that, because I tell you what, I think Missouri is still the place to be. I think there's a lot of good things happening in our state every day, and just don't get caught up in all the negative stuff that we hear all the time. And that a lot of the liberal media just wants to write a story of doom and gloom every day. There's lots of good things happening, and a lot of good things in this state, so I'm very proud to represent the people of this state.
All right, Governor Mike Parson this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and 104.5 News Radio 950 KWOS. We certainly appreciate your time. If there's anything that we can do to be of service to the folks here in mid-Missouri, you let us know, Governor, okay?
All right, thanks, Brandon. Will you all come over to State Fair and we'll have a corn dog with us or something over there?
Stephanie will be there. She'll see you tomorrow. All right?
All right.
All right.
See you.
We'll see you,
Governor.
Governor Mike Parson. By the way, a lot of questions. And they covered this yesterday. And a couple of weeks from now, so MoDOT's going to start holding some hearings.
Correct.
Not hearings, but kind of town hall sessions regarding I-70. And the most common question that we are getting this morning, how long will this take? How long before it's done?
Well, this is right now, but it's going to take about 6 to 7 years. Construction will start in Columbia. Columbia will be the first stretch. Important to note, from Columbia to Kingdom City, they're going to build it in about 20-mile increments, and then they're going to go down the line. Then when they finish in St. Louis, they're going to start in Kansas City. So the last stretch will be Boonville to Columbia. I think we're probably looking 6 years from now, 5 years from now for that. But this first one, we're really close to construction. I want to make one very quick point. The governor's Twitter feed, take a look at his Twitter feed. These progressives are on there saying, thank POTUS, thank Biden. The fact of the matter, that's what they're saying about the bill. Folks, read the bill. Read the bill. This right now, I want to say something. Right now, the bill, the governor's absolutely correct. The bill is funded by state revenue. They have record surpluses. That doesn't mean that Sam Graves and Congress can't tap in. They could tap in for federal money, but right now these are state dollars. These have nothing to do with anything Biden or Congress are doing in Washington. I'd encourage people to read the bill. And I know you asked me about a traffic crash in Roachport. I did just get off the phone with Joint Communications. They have a wreck on Route Double B, but nothing in Roachport. So I'm not sure. I know we've had a couple calls about it. I'm assuming just traffic is heavy.
And that would be all except for this. We're going to do that 5 minutes from now. What do you got for us, bud?
The Cruise robocars have become self-aware.
Cruise Coming up, we'll do that at 8:25, just like minutes before the opening bell. We'll do that for you in the morning bell business news with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you. One of the things we're going to be covering this morning. Does it seem like you have been seeing more and more of this on sale in stores already? We're going to do that coming up at 8:25 here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Welcome into the show. I am Branden Rathert, Stephanie Bell. Producer Hannah, Brian Houseworth, and John Marsh all hanging out.
And that would be all, except for this.
Fun thing we do with Mr. Marsh. These stories from the nether regions of the planet. What do you have for us? This nether region? That don't sound right.
Nope.
I don't know if we're going to the nether regions on this one, but we easily can.
Yeah, let's not. We usually do, so let's go somewhere else.
This is the one we're going to go the IT route. And coming on the backside of the 5-hour traffic jam at the Tri-Level in Jefferson City, the Cruise robocabs got stuck in San Francisco, causing a bizarre traffic jam, which the company is now blaming on a festival taking up too much wireless bandwidth. It happened in the city on Friday night, one day after California officials approved huge expansions to the Cruise robocab operations in San Francisco. Cruise said the Outside Lands Festival had caused what they called delayed connectivity to their autonomous vehicles. The videos posted on X showed a number of the stalled Cruise cars with their hazard lights blinking in the North Beach area and then in Golden Gate Park, jamming up traffic. And they said it was all because that night, Kendrick Lamar and Janelle Monáe were headlining the Outside Lands Festival and that they used up all the wireless bandwidth that was available. And one guy told the news crews, "We don't need them here. We did just fine before the IT cars showed up."
Wait, so these are like completely unmanned vehicles?
This is it. Yeah, it's like something out of Total Recall with Arnold or something.
Brandon's shaking his head. I don't know if you can hear the marbles in his microphone, but
couldn't do it. I got a friend, he bought a hybrid car, and it's got like a self-driving feature, and he's like, man, I can't do it. And he's a good old Southern boy from Southern Missouri, good old farm boy. Surprises me that he drives a Toyota Prius, but he says, I can't do that stuff. But that's interesting. So in other words, and this is not about California, it's about progressives, liberals, and Democrats. So it's kind of like with electric cars, John. Electric cars. And they're not thinking ahead. Again, we go back to the inability to think critically. So they have this idea, self-driving cars and all this.
And the artificial intelligence kicked in. They said, you know what? They got with each other, the robocars, and said, it's Friday night. Let's call it a night and not work the rest of the evening.
Well, obviously, the robocars are in their teen years already. But I want to ask you this. I have this discussion with the girls sometimes. If you know, can you talk about self-awareness, lack of self-awareness? I think we all know somebody in life who, to one extent or the other, you're like, man, you need some self-awareness. And maybe I'm that guy sometimes.
Ignorance is bliss, though.
Right? I don't know, and I don't care what people think about me. And you know what? It's none of my business what you think of me. It really isn't. But I wonder if you know that you lack self-awareness, isn't that self-awareness, John?
I guess that's kind of a circular logic there, but sure, why not?
Well, Stephanie always tells you it's impossible to know that you have self-awareness.
It's impossible to know that you lack.
Yes, that you lack self-awareness. Stephanie always argues with you on that one.
But I always win.
No, you don't.
Branden Rathert.
Say aye. Pardon me? Aye. Yeah. Just say I would like to support a yes vote on this. Submit it. Yeah, just say aye. Okay, just aye.
Partisan cooperation and a string of
couple of politicians, well into their 80s. Feinstein, I think, is in her 90s. Oldest elected official in the U.S. Congress, and this is becoming an issue. We presented a story earlier this week. How many members of the United States Congress that are 80 and older? We're going to cover that here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. But right now, we want to bring in Mazzie Boyd. Mazzie Boyd, she is the youngest state representative ever elected into the Missouri legislature. As a matter of fact, she is currently among the youngest state legislators in the entire United States. She reps an area in northwest Missouri. She joins us on the show now. Mazzie, welcome to the show. Let's start with this. Your take as a 25-year-old politician or as a 25-year-old elected servant, elected when you were 24. You look at these people like Feinstein, McConnell. Biden is a great example. As somebody in their 20s, what do you see and how do you see this?
You know, I see it as the perfect reason for term limits right here. You know, I've always been kind of the nature that people should be able to elect who they want to. But I think this shows the perfect example of people that have been able to get elected and honestly just keep getting that lobbyist money to where nobody can ever beat them. I mean, Mitch McConnell and Dianne Feinstein have a perfect name. Nobody even probably looks into what they do. They just look on the ballot and see their last name and vote yes.
And then what about, so besides the political aspect, I'm wondering as somebody, you have a job. As a matter of fact, you're on your way to work now. You, in effect, you have two jobs, your job and then your job as a Missouri state representative. Just as a 25-year-old young woman in the state of Missouri, you see this stuff, politics aside. How do you feel about what you're seeing?
You know, I think in general it's concerning. I mean, I'm a true optimist. I'm always glass half full, but definitely it's concerning. And I always like to point to people, we should be really looking at state politics because this is where everything that we do honestly affects you. Mitch McConnell and Dianne Feinstein, it's going to take them forever to do anything. And honestly, if they do something, it's going to be stupid like the Green New Deal. But I think that's honestly the future of politics is in state politics. I think that's how we take back our country.
Well, as a matter of fact, you know, and that's something we talk about a lot here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, Mazzie, is, you know, we say, as a matter of fact, the Boone County Clerk, Breonna Lennon, quote tweeted me on this, or quote X'd me on this now. What do we call it?
It's still tweeted.
Tweeted. Because we always say the more localer, the more importanter. We get wrapped up in the presidential race. We're going to get wrapped up in the gubernatorial race. Then we get wrapped up in our state senate legislative races, but city council. And as we've seen over the past several years, man, the importance of that school board race. Who cared about a school board race prior to all this progressive crap that started happening several years ago? We're going to cover some of that. Our guest this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, this is Mazzie Boyd. And by the way, Brian Houseworth is here. Good morning, Brian.
It's good to see you.
There's Mr. Marsh.
To have the representative
yes,
with
sir.
us,
Hannah is here.
Hello.
Stephanie Bell is not here. She stepped out for a bit. She's doing the breakfast tomorrow at the State Fair. My name is Branden Rathert. State Rep Mazzie Boyd joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Mazzie, talk to us about the whole Trump indictments. I think folks who don't know, you worked on the Trump campaign. You worked at the White House and all. What's your take on the indictments?
You know, I think the indictment's just another witch hunt. And, you know, it's interesting because I was just in Guatemala a few weeks ago and I was talking with some people there, and it was so fascinating. They were telling me about how the FBI was going after one of their presidential candidates and trying to arrest him. And I honestly thought they were joking, but no, they were telling the truth. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, when did our own government start going after presidential candidates just like this? You know, Trump can get elected from his jail cell. I think he's the presidential primary winner. That's who I like. And honestly, this stuff is just bogus. We knew something was wrong with the election. You know, I know there's different factions of how we think what was wrong. I'm more of the mail-in ballots. We need to be making sure that people that are from the United States are voting and actually have a voter using their driver's license. I think the voter cards with no picture ID is a bad deal. I'm really thankful in Missouri that you have to show your vote. You have to show your driver's license to vote now. But it's insane. If anyone thinks that this is okay, you're out of your mind.
All right. She's making it crystal clear for us this morning. State rep. She doesn't rep an area around here. She reps an area in Northwest Missouri, but she's joining us on the show. She's among the youngest state legislators in our entire country, youngest rep ever elected in the history of Missouri. And we're talking generational politics with Mazzie Boyd this morning.
Branden, thank you. I really appreciate the representative for joining us. She represents an area in Northwest Missouri that I used to be a radio broadcaster for, Bethany and Trenton and just outside of Chillicothe. Representative, I appreciate your time. I want to talk about this issue of rural Missouri and the economy, which has come up at the state fair. When I worked in Northwest Missouri, very similar then to what it is now. A lot of poverty, a lot of plant closings, and bad highways. What can be done from your perspective to keep more young people like yourself that go to college and come back in that area, A, and B, to keep those hospitals open? That's so important for those elderly folk.
So number one, we're talking about young people. I think that comes from the family perspective. I think a lot of things generate from family. My family loves Northwest Missouri. They took a lot of pride in letting me know about everything about our community that we grew up in. And honestly, I loved growing up there. I went to public school, then I went to private school, but I got to have a sense that I wanted to go away, but I knew where I wanted to raise my kids, and it was back in Northwest Missouri. And so I think that's one of the most important things. Also, I think a lot of people are just negative about small towns. We see that all the time. I can't wait to leave here. I never felt that way because my parents never felt that way. And I think a lot of people wanting to leave is probably mostly kind of stemming from their grandparents or their parents saying, you know what, I hate this place. Like, I hate being here, I think it's really just kind of just being optimistic. When we talk about the roads, I'm surprised, we passed the gas tax and, the roads are still very similar. I know MoDOT is trying. I appreciate their openness with me, but we have a lot of, lettered highways in Northwest Missouri, probably some of the most in the state up there in the Great North. Yep. And it's rough. Like, I have people, that is the number one thing I get calls about all day long is our roads. Yep. And I think having more of an oversight over MoDOT would help that.
All right, Mazzie Boyd reps an area in our Missouri House, Northwest Missouri. I want to ask you, going into the House, you were elected when you were 24 years old. First session, I'm wondering, was it any different? Do you feel like you were viewed differently because of your age?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people are surprised at that, but I honestly felt like I got a lot of respect, mostly because I read the bills, number one, and people knew that. They knew that when I would say something about a bill, they knew I wasn't fluffing them. They knew a lobbyist wasn't telling me what to say. It was because I actually read the bills and understood them, and always was trying to make sure they were the best bills possible.
So, and was there anybody that kind of helped you in the session this year, maybe kind of took you under their wing and said, hey, kind of here's where the bathroom, and I know they have the orientation, all that, but like seriously, when you're in the sausage making process, anybody that you could point to said, man, they were helpful.
Yeah, so we do get mentors, and of course, my favorite mentor, maybe one of your favorite guests, is Cherie Tolson-Rice. She's amazing. There was one day we actually showed up in the same outfit. It was the same dress, and she is awesome. I think I'll probably shed some tears since this is her senior year, but she truly is a firebrand and a true conservative and says whatever she thinks, and I love it.
Oh, she does. She has always been that way. That's why Cherie Tolson-Rice has garnered so much respect. That and her work with Missouri Task Force 1, who, by the way, they've sent some cadaver dogs and some personnel to Hawaii. They're going to help out with the fire there. So I want to ask you this. Was the most difficult moment in the legislative session, was it the day that you and Ms. Rice showed up wearing the same dress? Was that like the most catastrophic thing that happened this legislative session?
Absolutely not. No, it kind of was planned. Difficult. I think when they were putting sunset clauses on bills that should have been passed years ago, that was a little difficult with the men and women's sports. The state factor is great. Even with the sunset clause, it's fine because they have it in the wrong spot. But those are pretty tough because a lot of people worked on those bills, and we all thought that was a priority. Not getting the initiative petition that we wanted. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to work on next year, and it's going to have to happen. Would love to see the governor maybe do a special for initiative petition, but we'll see.
All right, State Rep Mazzie Boyd joining us this morning. Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Anything else that you would... I want to ask you this. What advice would you give? Because I know there's a lot of younger people, because we see it with our audience, and it's all, and I'm not exaggerating, but it's sometimes these younger folks that almost come out of the woodwork, and they'll come up and say, hey, John, just so you know, we listen to Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and we like the show, but we get kind of weirded out because I'm in my 20s. I'm supposed to be a Democrat. I'm supposed to believe all the social bullcrap they're putting out there about if I think I'm a boy, then I'm a and that is just, it's factually wrong. What advice would you offer to somebody who's younger and they think, you know what, yeah, I'm conservative, but I have fear, and rightfully so. What would you say? What's the advice?
Yeah, I think the best advice I would give is two things. Number one, make sure you do the small things extremely well. But number two, just know what you know. I always knew what I didn't know, and I always wanted to know how I could do better. So I read a ton of books. Death of the West by Patrick Buchanan was life-changing for me. And I think people have to try to find out what conservatism really means to me, because it means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Mazzie Boyd, Sarah up Northwest Missouri, man. We're very appreciative of your time, and keep up the good work, and I hope that you're able to influence other folks to get involved, and not just younger people, but I hope that people are listening going, man, there's somebody 24 years old elected among the youngest legislators in the entire country. This person is an inspiration because she got involved. I hope you continue to be an inspiration. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
That's a name, by the way, that we're going to continue to hear a lot about. Mazzie Boyd. I would think that when Congressman Sam Graves retires, whenever that is, she's a name that definitely would have to be considered for that seat. Very popular within the base.
And I think another name we're going to be hearing more in statewide circles, the state senator from Springfield, Lincoln Huff, who's getting mentioned by a lot of folks, and who is at, by the way, this was signing for I-70 yesterday. Coming up morning, Bell will look at your futures, and then have you already been seeing Good morning, 8:25, time for the Morning Bell. Business news, little twist only Stephanie Bell can give you. I'll be handling this day real quickly. Apparently, there are some traffic issues around the tri-level, according to the MoDOT Travelers map, showing some backups. We're getting some text saying potentially there's an accident just before the tri-level, and I rather do enjoy this text from listener Ed. Says Bottoms was backed up about a mile in fog earlier, but moving better. And this was as of about 10 minutes ago. It says moving better than yesterday, if that's any consolation. And I like the optimism. Thank you. All right, Morning Bell. First of all, let's take a look at futures before we get ready to open up here in the next about 3 minutes or so. Futures are down right now. So if you're not imagining it, but if you go into the stores, maybe you've seen this stuff on sale already. And it's not Christmas stuff. It's Halloween stuff. You seen this, Hannah?
Oh, yeah. I don't think it's that early for it. Am I just crazy?
Yep.
Okay.
John,
Maybe I'm just excited about pumpkin spice.
It could be like Halloween stuff. And John, I don't know how often you get into the store. You seeing some of this stuff already?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. You sell the little plastic pumpkins that you get for the kids to put their trick-or-treat goodies in at the store.
And here's the thing I always think about trick-or-treating. Isn't that like socialism? It's like just going out and begging for stuff.
What a fuddy-duddy.
I know.
Goodness.
I'm sorry. Going out and begging for stuff. And
Wow.
we're just handing it out like we're all progressives.
Yeah, he's the guy who hands out gum drops and stuff
No,
like that.
he's the
right?
one who turns his porch light off and hides.
No, I'm the one. I leave the porch light on, and I just don't answer the door. I don't do that. Anyhow,
Scrooge?
I know. Working on it, though.
No, yeah.
So, yeah, as a matter of fact, one retail, I think it was it Michael's? Who's the crafts store?
Michael's and Hobby Lobby are the two big ones.
Yeah, July the 7th, Michael's started, they put it on the shelves July this 3 days after we celebrated America's birthday. They said, heck, with Labor Day, we are going straight to Halloween. Here's why, because they make more money, obviously, on Halloween, but they're seeing more and more of that. So you're not imagining things. Anybody seen Christmas stuff?
Oh, yeah. All summer long. Summer long. At those craft stores we just talked about? Yes.
Does that count if it's a craft store? I mean, that's kind of what they do.
I mean, I would think it counts.
Yeah. All right.
Like ornaments and stuff?
Yeah. All right. So Halloween stuff is out there already. And then I wanted to share this too, because this is an incredible success story out of Missouri. There's a place called Barkay, and apparently it's Missouri-based. It's like a dog park and bar. I've never seen one of them, but I think they were based. It's a Kansas City-based company, and apparently it's like this place you go in and hang. I almost think of like if you've ever been to the Logboat Brewery in Columbia. Pretty cool place.
It is.
I don't go there anymore, but when I used to go there about 1,086 days ago.
That's where you went that time you left the middle of the Mizzou homecoming parade, wasn't it? You just left and didn't come back.
I didn't leave. We were walking the parade and I got detracted, John. I don't know what happened. But
it happens.
But not anymore. But it's kind of the way I envision this Barkay. It's kind of like the Logboat Brewery. You know, they got kind of the yard out there. You can get beer and you can bring your stuff. Well, this Barkay company, they have been bought by a national development firm with plans to go nationalize.
exactly why it happened. And, witness after witness, piece of evidence after piece of evidence, all worked to favor the story that we were trying to tell.
That is defense attorney Ben Faber talking to our news partners at ABC 17. This on the story. Howard County prosecutor dropping charges in this high-profile case because this guy is former Central Methodist University football player. So, John, what's the word on why charges were dropped in this case?
Yeah, this was Kendarius Taylor, the guys were former CMU football players, and apparently there was an argument between the two that led to the Torrance Evans, the victim, being shot. Now prosecutors are saying that Taylor acted in self-defense.
And I wish stories like this would get more coverage because, whenever there's a shooting in the news, especially, and you bring race into it, man, they are all over that kind of stuff. When I say they, I mean the national news outlets. And I wish that there would be these stories would get highlighted more. So, in effect, they're saying it was self-defense, and they talk about, this dude who is the dude who was charged. He's not charged anymore. Like, he was smaller than the dude, and apparently there had been, some issues. He was in his own place where he, should have expected a certain amount of peace or whatever. Didn't get it. But do you think it would be, I don't know, I think there'd be a different take if these stories were, when somebody acts in self-defense, utilizing their Second Amendment right, which is embedded in the Constitution of our country. I wish those stories would get more coverage. Do you think it might change some of the perspective on guns, Marsh?
Yeah, I guess it's academic because those stories aren't going to get that coverage.
And they're not, but I do want to, you guys are covering a very important topic. In the media's defense, including myself, all of us, and with the exception of Lucas, who broke that story about Howard County, we were with the governor for 2 bill signings and then this mess on 54. And Lucas has covered that. In the most important thing to note about this, and I agree with you, Brandon, if it happens like that, where somebody apparently is cleared or if the charges drop, it must be reported. But the bottom line is that's a closed record. It's a closed record, and I think Deborah, I think even the defense attorney Faber said that in the piece. It is, but this got a lot of attention when it first happened, and there was a vigil at the football stadium, and balloons were released for the victim. So he was charged, as I recall it, originally with first-degree murder.
Yeah, it was first degree, yes. and then it was stepped down to manslaughter.
That's right.
And when I say more coverage, I don't mean like, I'm not talking about us, but
Sure.
I mean like on a national level, because whenever somebody gets shot, you see USA Today, MSNBC, oh my God, see, guns, they killed another person. The gun did not kill a person. A person killed a person. If they would give equal coverage to stories like, hey, somebody protected their life by utilizing one of the amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America. There is another story. This one was out of Indiana. This was just last week. Apparently, some ex-boyfriend shows up at the former girlfriend's house and he has the dad down. He's got his knee on his head and is threatening to kill him with the gun.
Jeez.
Wife comes out, boom, shoots and kills the dude. And listen, anytime somebody dies, people, oh, well, that's too bull. You were threatening somebody with a gun. You got what you got coming, man. But those stories, I would just think if they would get more coverage, like, hey, here's somebody that's practicing an amendment to the Constitution, and look at that, saved life.
Totally agree that on self-defense stories where they're cleared, yes, those stories should be reported when that does happen. The other thing that I try to do, and I know John does as well, and it doesn't happen very often, is if someone goes to trial, and a lot of times the media will report when charges are filed, particularly in big cases. Quite frankly, most of the time, those will end up in a guilty plea of some time. Rarely do they go to trial, but when they do, I'll tell you, I'm only aware of 2 acquittals I've seen in Boone County for murder, and one of them was Leo Robinson here at Waffle House not too long ago. He's going to go down for an illegal gun, but he was acquitted. But we have an obligation when someone is acquitted to report it, and I did that with Leo Robinson, acquitted of murder. The other thing, Brandon, that's very important is if we know that charges are dropped, it should be reported. But that rarely happens. And I can tell you this: the prosecutors don't put out a press release and say we've dropped the charges.
That's a good point.
They don't,
because what if you're a prosecutor and you're putting out a release that says we've dropped the charges? Is that in effect saying, so
I'm not tough on crime?
Well, and it could be I'm going to give you guys a quick example, and it's a political example. Wendell Bailey, and John will remember this, in 1995, he was I believe the treasurer at the time.
Bucks.
Exactly. He was indicted by a federal grand jury. A lot of people probably forget that. And the federal prosecutor said, they dropped the indictment and said, we're going to come back soon and indict the guy. This was in 1995. They never did. They never did. But Bailey's political career after that was basically so. I mean, that because of the publicity, and I don't think he ran for much after that. He ran for state senate. But the reality is when the indictment was dropped, or the charges were dropped. Yes, it had to be reported and should have been reported.
That was a deal where, as I recall, that Bailey was accused of misusing state employees and equipment. And that's when he was running for governor back in '92.
Yeah, but the indictment came in 95, but it was from the 90. You're exactly right. But the charges didn't stick because they dropped it just a few days later.
Incidentally, different Bailey. And I was going to, so this is not, somebody said Bailey. I'm going to bring up something about Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey.
Right.
But I have a copy, and I'll show if you're watching on our YouTube channel, which you can do every single morning.
Yeah, on the Wake Up Facebook page or Wake Up Mid-Missouri on YouTube.
So there's, if you're watching right now, you see we have a letter from Attorney General Andrew Bailey. It is addressed to a high-profile Democrat. And the first line of this letter is what's getting me. I'm going to share it with you here in a minute. Good morning. Welcome to the show. There is Brian Houseworth.
It's good to see you, sir.
Mr. Marsh.
Good morning.
Stephanie Bell is back on a Feel Good Friday, actually. She is going to be attending the big breakfast tomorrow, State Fair. Incidentally, I want to sidestep here real quick, John. The State Fair, we talk about State Fair and corn dogs and all this stuff and livestock and things like that. The politics that happen at the State Fair. You've got the big breakfast tomorrow. Stephanie Bell is going to be there. We've got what happened Monday. Mark Alford bringing in Jonathan Jackson, who is he's a U.S. congressman from Illinois, Democrat. These people were coming to the State Fair to talk about the Farm Bill and stuff. What happens? You look at the history of Reagan at the State Fair. State Fair happening in Sedalia right now. It's fun. The Midway is fun. Politically, it's pretty important.
Especially in election years or leading up to election years.
And we're not even in an election year, but we are in an election year. My name is Branden. Welcome into the show. Attorney General Andrew Bailey sent a letter. And what's getting me here, I love the first line here. I love this stuff. Andrew Bailey has written a letter to Mr. John Kerry, the United States Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. The letter starts, Dear Mr. Kerry, we couldn't help but notice that you like to travel. So we wanted to extend an invitation to visit us here in Missouri and get a taste for life in the heartland.
How nice.
In the space of a day or two, you can visit Cuba, Mexico, Odessa, Paris, Sparta, Troy, Warsaw, Westphalia, Windsor, Versailles. Local tip, we pronounce the L here, all without leaving the state. You won't even need a fancy private jet. If you took the time to tour and meet the hardworking people of Missouri, many of whom earn a living on the farm, it might change your perspective a bit. It's hard to get perspective when you're constantly at 35,000 feet burning through jet fuel, flying to other countries, talk about, we got to save fuel and protect the climate. It's kind of hard to get perspective when you're at 35,000 feet, Mr. Kerry. These farms represent Missourians' livelihoods and legacies. You recently called for dramatic government regulation of agriculture in the name of climate change, stating you just can't continue to warm the planet while also expecting to feed it. It doesn't work, so we have to reduce emissions from the food system. Basically, Mr. Bailey is just calling out, again, the hypocrisy of and it's not just about the people with the D behind their name. It's the way a progressive thinks. It's the way a liberal thinks. That's why we always give out this phone number. If you're a progressive, there is a phone number that you can call. It's 800-662-5787. 4357. 800-662-4357. I would highly encourage you to call that phone number. But what Mr. Bailey, the point being, Mr. Bailey, our Attorney General, is calling out the hypocrisy, saying, see, if I put it in writing for you, if I write it down, maybe you'll have a different perspective. It's like this. When you do a budget, remember when you got to that point in life where you're like, maybe I should write down my budget? And it's different when you put it in writing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I had that same experience, too, because I'm like, okay, in my head, so I got this deposited this week, and so I have this, I got gas. I put it in writing, it's very different. And I think that's what Bailey is trying to do here with Carrie. Look, Carrie, let's put this stuff in writing, all right? It's like in California. Federal employees in San Francisco, the federal building in San Francisco, their bosses are telling them, hey, work from home. You know why? Because it's too dangerous to come into work, because these people that don't understand, they lack the critical thinking. Defund the police. Let's do all this, and we see what's happening in San Francisco. You know what I saw in writing yesterday? It was on the Tobler show. We've got this guy.
Was it the text that Tobler got?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's the dude's name is Carl, and he's just, he strikes me as a lonely old dude. And I say this because we have a history through our text at 874-9390. Have always been very polite. He'd say, well, why don't you do this? And I'd say, Carl, here you go. Here it is. Well, no, but this. And you just, you just be polite. And you move on. But I was on Tobler's show yesterday because we'd get this a lot from this guy. He would he would text us all the time. I'm not listening to your show anymore. And he would text us every day to tell us he's not listening.
Yeah. One of those.
Yeah, one of those. And I appreciate the guy taking time out of his day to say, hey, you suck. I appreciate that. Good, bad, or indifferent. We appreciate it. But he sent a text about, I can't listen to your show, Randy, because Brandon is just rambling on. And I was looking at the history. I cannot tell you the number of texts that we have received. I'm not listening to your show anymore. And I'm not saying that to knock the guy. I'm saying that, man. We appreciate feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Fortunately, right now, if you've been texting us, we're not responding. We're not ignoring you. We're just having a couple of issues. And then I heard this yesterday. The girls give me crud all the time, John, because when I meet a new listener and they listen, especially if it's somebody younger.
You go fishing.
I go fishing, says Anna. But I like to ask them, especially if it's not an old white dude like me. I like to ask, why do you listen?
Tell me all the good things you like about me.
And that's not what I'm doing, but apparently that's what it sounds like.
A little bit.
But I'm just trying to get a handle on why is it that...
Well, like the lady's answer said her XM subscription on the car expired.
Yeah, that's what happened yesterday.
Oh, John gave it away.
So this young lady, her name is Sarah Salmon. She approached me at the I-70 signing yesterday, and she says she works at Stevens College, works real hard. She comes up, and she says, hey, I listened, never met her before. And I said, why do you listen? And she said... XM doesn't work anymore. Coming up, we're going to be doing some leftovers, some really good things. Did not get a chance to get to during the show. And one of the things I do want to highlight, Story Post-Dispatch, they asked officers, former police officers in St. Louis, why they left the force early. And I was surprised, not surprised at the number one answer given. That's coming up in Leftovers about 5 minutes from now. officers were leaving the police force. St. Louis has lost hundreds of cops. Here's why some say they left, and I don't think it. Here's the surprising part about this that the Post-Dispatch printed it and said, yep, it has to do with, in effect, the public perception of police. And where does that negative public perception of police comes from? It comes from a lot of the national news outlets, in my opinion. Marsh, you got anything for leftovers this morning?
Well, kind of story we've been reporting this morning, some grim duty for Missouri Task Force 1. 4 more members are headed to Maui. They're taking their cadaver dog with them to continue the search for human remains. And we hear from Fox News they're having a heck of a time identifying the bodies that they found so far. It's over 100 now.
And then the other thing, and again, one of the things that I have in common with Mazzie Boyd, she's a state rep that joined us earlier, one of the youngest elected statewide office holders in the entire country. We'd had her on before when she was campaigning last year at the age of 24. I think the youngest or second youngest ever by a matter of days, second youngest person ever elected into the Missouri House. And she said, I can be an eternal optimist. And I'm that way, too. I always hope and expect the best. And oftentimes I'm disappointed, Hannah, because my expectations are too high. I need to broaden my horizons. I don't want to lower my expectations. I want to broaden my horizons. But, man, so people in Hawaii, they're looting and they're going and robbing people that do have some things left. And that's just disheartening. And I appreciate what Missouri Task Force 1, something to be very proud of here in mid-Missouri. As a matter of fact, one of our local state reps, Cherie Tolson-Reich, has worked very hard over the years to do that. And I also wanted to share this before we scoot forward into the Gary Nolan Show. Interesting letter to the editor in the Jefferson City News-Tribune from Patricia Tompkins. Dear editor, I was very surprised and hurt that Whaley's Pharmacy would close its doors after 29 years. I myself been there with loyalty. The people there that became my friends, and it seemed like, without notice to the people who worked there or the customers, they were just gone. I get the sentiment. I don't think that's really the way it went down. But what strikes me about that, John, it's somebody talking about a small local business. She talked about the loyalty and the people that worked there.
We hate to see the small businesses go, don't we?
Yeah, we hate to see them go, and it's not just because, hey, it's a small local business and they're supporting the economy and they're hiring local people. It's not just that, but it's when this woman says in this letter to the editor in the Jefferson City News-Tribune, these people were my friends. I relied on these people, and she says, I will miss you, and you'll be in my heart with sadness. I will say goodbye to Whaley's after so long of being there. Maybe some 84 years. Not sure, but they were a fixture. And so I thought it was cool, and it also speaks to the work, I believe, that Whaley's had done over the years in serving the clientele here in mid-Missouri. You can see how well, how good of a job that they had done over the years. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to be joined. This is actually kind of interesting, and I'm just a casual Mizzou football fan. I've been a lifelong Chiefs fan for 8 years now. Casual Mizzou football fan, love doing the Tiger tailgates, love hanging out with